How do I look?
Great.
What's my better side? I go on the right or the left?
Okay.
I'm
I'm a
gonna
visual
be
learner.
famous someday. You guys are gonna put this on YouTube. And you're like, look,
From
I had
Tufts
Mr.
Phone.
Wayne in class. See? From Tufts Phone.
Tufts
Yeah.
YouTube account. There we
Okay,
go.
let's go over the coronary circuit, which is what?
The blood flow
To the
To the lung, to the heart.
to the heart, because the pulmonary circuit is blood to the lungs, the systemic circuit is blood to the body, the coronary circuit is to the heart. Okay, so we need to get oxygen to our heart muscles. So remember, our left ventricle is going to be pumping oxygen-rich blood. It's going to come up through the, what's this big red guy? Aorta, which is through this valve. So this valve would be the
Semilunar valve.
aortic semilunar valve. And then you see these two arteries right here. So as the blood comes up the aortic semilunar valve, is going to come out this artery and this artery. What are these called?
Coronary artery.
Coronary arteries. So there's two, so one's a left and one's a right. So this one would be the left coronary artery, and this would be the right coronary artery. Okay? So now those are going to go behind the pulmonary trunk. So we can see it poking its head out right here. It's really short. So what's this? Is this left or right? This is the left coronary artery still, so that means this guy right here is the right coronary, and that one's a lot longer. Okay, the left coronary artery splits. After it splits, we have to change its name. So the one that comes down the front middle would be the, let's think about what's our word for front?
Anterior.
Anterior. What's our word for middle or between? Inter. What are we between? So anterior interventricular artery. Make sense?
Yeah.
This one wraps around and kind of goes around like a circle.
So circumflex.
So circumflex. Okay? Now remember we said that there's this little trench that these arteries have to go through so they don't stick out too far and get subjected to friction. So what's the trench that this anterior interventricular goes down? It's also down the front, so it's going to be anterior. It's also between.
Interventricular sulcus.
Yeah, so the anterior interventricular artery goes in the anterior interventricular sulcus. Makes sense, right? Okay. So what's the vein that's running in that trench as well?
The
Interventricular vein.
great.
No, yeah, they simplified it for us. It's called the great cardiac vein. Okay, so but that's also in that sulcus. All right, so there's really two of them, but it doesn't matter which one you point at. They're both the same, great cardiac vein. Okay, so what's the trench that the circumflex runs through? Notice it's between the atrium and the ventricle, right in between it. So it's going to be the atrioventricular groove. Atrioventricular groove. And that's no matter what side of the heart you're on, anywhere between atrium and ventricle is always the atrioventricular groove. Okay? All right, so what's this little guy again up here then?
The coronary.
Coronary artery.
Which one?
Artery. The left.
Left coronary artery. So the one running down the front is the
Interventricular.
anterior interventricular, and this is the circumflex. What's this main vein again?
Great cardiac.
Great cardiac vein, and it runs in what trench?
Anterior.
Interventricular sulcus, and the circumflex runs through the
Anterior. Or anterior.
atrioventricular groove. Okay, so what's this artery again right here?
Right coronary.
Right coronary artery. It splits and goes down the right ventricle. It's a little bit shorter. You guys remember the name of that one? That's the marginal artery. And it runs right by this kind of smaller vein. So instead of the great cardiac vein, we're going to call this the small cardiac vein. Okay? So marginal artery, small cardiac vein. Right coronary artery continues, goes all the way around the atrioventricular groove, comes down the back middle. So what's our artery going to be called? The back middle.
Posterior.
Interventricular artery, which is running in what trench? Posterior interventricular sulcus. Okay? And then what's the vein that runs in that sulcus? It's not great, it's not small, it's right in the middle of the back, so we call it the middle cardiac vein. Okay? And then our last vein is this big, huge honking guy. All the blood in our coronary circuit goes into this first, then into this. So what's this vein? Should have cleaned my fingernails before I was going to be on video. This is the coronary sinus. So what does the coronary sinus empty into? The right atrium. What other two vessels go into the right atrium?
Superior and inferior.
Superior and inferior vena cava. So if I ask you what are the three openings into the right atrium that bring blood to the heart, you got your two vena cavas and you have your coronary sinus. This is bringing blood back from the lower body, the head and the arms. This is bringing blood back from the heart itself. Any questions on coronary circuit? Okay, let's go over, let's go over some muscles and stuff like that, okay? What do we call this string cheesy muscle that's only found in the ventricles?
Trabeculae.
Trabeculae carinae, good. If it's up in the atrium, make sure I'm pointing at the right thing. It's up in the atrium, what do we call it?
Pectinate.
Pectinate muscle. What do we call it when you go from pectinate to smooth in the atrium, that transition? The
Crista terminalis.
Crista terminalis, excellent. Okay. What do we call this muscle here and here? This one would have, well, they both have three. Okay, but what do we call all of these muscles, these six? Where they have the strings going onto it.
Chordae.
Well, the strings are the chordae tendineae, so that means these muscles that the strings go into are the papillary muscles. So that's how you're going to know if it's papillary or trabeculae carinae, is by the chordae tendineae. If the chordae tendineae are not going into it, then it's trabeculae carinae. If they are, it's papillary. All right. What do we call this little white thing right here?
No, ligamentum
Arteriosum. What was it called before? Before the person is born. It was called the ductus arteriosus. So if you notice, they both end in arteriosum or arteriosus. So they're gonna go together. It's just when it's open, it's a duct, so it's ductus. When it's closed, it's a ligamentum. And I always remember ligamentum, arteriosum. They have the same ending. Ductus, arteriosus have the same ending. All right, what's the purpose of that? Ductus arteriosus? Is that a defect or is there a benefit? Well, it's not to keep them together, but in a fetal heart, is there any oxygen poor blood? No. So does all the blood really have to go into the lungs? No, because it's not going to do anything in the lungs. It's already got oxygen, so it's just a shortcut. So it can get to the rest of the body that much faster. What's our other shortcut? Yes. It's a fossa ovalis, which used to be called the foramen ovale. Okay. What structure is that opening going through? It's that wall. No, it's the wall that is separating the atria from each other. What septum? Very good. Interatrial septum. So what's this wall right here?
Interventricular.
Interventricular septum. Good. Or we could also ask you what layer of the heart is all of this? The myocardium. Good. Any questions?
Are we gonna have to find a lot of like the veins and arteries?
On your actual hearts, no. Probably the only ones I could put on there are like the anterior interventricular artery, the posterior interventricular artery, the coronary sinus I could probably put on there. But all the other ones, like marginal, circumflex, would be on models. So what you guys should be able to do is find all of those coronary arteries that we just went over on this guy too. You can see the coronary sinus very clearly on the back here. Okay, so that's, you want to notice like which ones are pulmonary arteries, which ones are pulmonary veins up here, stuff like that. Cool.
Would you put the